Black Earth offers a full suite of humic solutions, from high-purity granules to powder, liquid, and soluble formulations, all powered by pure Humulite. Trusted by growers worldwide from one of the world's rarest Humulite reserves. Grow stronger with the power of Black Earth Humulite. Learn more from Mind to Market by visiting blackearth.com.
It's time for RealAg Radio on Rural Radio Channel 147 on Sirius XM. RealAg Radio and RealAgriculture.com is your home for insight and analysis of the issues that are impacting your farm business. Let's get real and get connected with RealAg Radio.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio Channel 147, Sirius XM. It is Monday, October 6th. It is Agronomic Monday, and I am your host, Lyndsey Smith. Today's show brought to you by FMC Canada. Wonderful to be here. Thank you so much for making us part of your day. We really do appreciate it. I wanted to share a little bit of how the weekend went. You'll hear I've got all sorts of questions for Peter Repeat Johnson on today's episode, mostly around, having essentially summer weather well into October. This is not the norm, everybody. So I'm not sure what it's like where you are, but here in Ontario and Eastern Ontario specifically, it was almost 30 degrees yesterday. Bright, sunshiny. I mean, beautiful, but it sort of feels strange with the leaves changing and falling. We are very, very dry. It is supposed to rain tomorrow for large areas of Ontario. We will absolutely take it. We're definitely challenged, I would say. So personally on our farm, we have sheep. Our sheep are all right now grazing on cover crops or cover crops that were planted for fall grazing. So those are two different things. Any questions, just let me know. And I will say we're noticing a pretty huge difference on how long those cover crops are lasting with no rain in between. So the cover crops themselves, yes, they came up. There's enough there to graze on, but certainly we're not seeing any of that continued growth that usually would keep the sheep going a little bit longer. So that has meant a lot more moves. So thankful for my partner we've got a new fencing system and that's making a big difference, but definitely noticing this persistent dryness in Ontario. And I know for many farmers, as they're taking off the soybeans, noticing that difference, looking at the corn crop, certainly it's drying down very quickly. And really, it does start to beg the question about soil moisture recharge and what we could be looking at in the spring. So still plenty of time, of course, obviously, for the weather to sort of turn back to a more average and get some of that rainfall. But goodness, I really hope tomorrow's forecast holds true. All right, on today's show, on that note, a few of those topics we will cover with Peter Johnson. I've got two segments with him. We've got a product spotlight as well with Allison Wilkinson of FMC. And then to round out the show, we'll hear from Olivia Noorenberghe and Bern Tobin on a corn school on rootworm. And that's a very important one. If you are a corn grower and if you have been using traits to protect against corn rootworm, definitely in some areas, and we've seen this now for a couple of years, we know that the rootworm pest is evolving. We know that not all that resistance is necessarily holding up, which again is not entirely unexpected. However, we certainly are seeing corn on corn be one of the biggest issues, but it really does, as Olivia will unpack in the last segment, it does matter what kind of weather we're getting, as well as soil type. Soil type plays a role with this pest, which is really interesting. As always, if you've got feedback on today's show or any of the shows that you listen to here on RealAg Radio, so whether it's an episode with Sean, whatever the case may be, we do love your feedback, questions, follow-ups, comments, or story ideas. If you've got them, you can always zip us a line. My email is lsmith@realagriculture.com. Your regular host, Sean Haney, is shaney@realagriculture.com. But you know what? Better than that is to find us across social media. Everything we post on realagriculture.com on the website, all those stories will get shared across our social. And we've got a really talented team of people that also will do reels and shorts and all sorts of things across your favorite social media platform to keep you up to date. Some of them are just for fun, but a lot of them are, if we've got breaking news or anything like that, that's where you're going to find them first. So be sure to follow us. Give us a follow on YouTube, X, Facebook, TikTok. Yes, go and do it. And we're on LinkedIn as well. So there you go. You can find us just about anywhere. Okay, we've got to take a quick break here, but we'll be back with more Agronomic Monday, brought to you by FMC Canada, right after this.
It's now time for a product spotlight. We're talking right now to Tim Dara, canola technical strategy lead for Bayer. As growers are thinking about hybrid selection for this upcoming year, what's compelling in the DeKalb portfolio?
I mentioned DK401TL. That's a special product, I'll be honest. It yields fantastic. It offers the dual trait in terms of TrueFlex and LibertyLink, so it gives a lot of flexibility for growers. It just has a lot of great fits across Western Canada. We're also offering a new hybrid this year on the TrueFlex side of things, DK904TF, which is the highest yielding glyphosate-resistant hybrid that we've ever tested. It has a great opportunity for guys in those areas that are looking for that fit. We're right now in the middle of that seed selling season, and we're in the middle of our DeKalb Harvest Rewards offer. In that offer, growers stand to save up to $75 a bag on canola when they book by October 31st. And that's for all DeKalb hybrids, so the entire lineup's available for that offer. And if growers are interested about that and want to learn more, they can talk to their rep or talk to their agronomist, or they can go to DeKalbRewards.ca and find out more about it.
If you're involved in the agriculture industry, it's important to stay informed on all the latest issues affecting your business. At RealAgriculture.com, we offer fast, reliable news, information, and insights to help you keep on top of all of the latest in Canadian agriculture. Visit RealAgriculture.com and sign up for our free daily newsletter covering everything from news, agronomy, animal agriculture, and much more. Visit RealAgriculture.com/subscribe today.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, channel 147, Sirius XM. It is Monday, October 6th. It is Agronomic Monday. And of course, it is brought to you by FMC Canada. So thank you to FMC. Give them a follow on social media. We will, of course, as I mentioned, have Allison Wilkinson on the product spotlight just after we hear from the man, the myth, the legend, Pete Johnson. How are you, Pete?
I'm excellent, thanks, Lyndsey, but I'm quite sure I'm not a legend or a myth.
Well, you may be both. All right. It's subjective. Okay. We have had incredible weather here in Ontario over the weekend, and I'm going to unpack the good and the bad, and then you take it away there, Pete. So it's been summer. Let's just put it that way. We have had, yes, cooler nights. So where was this in, July? But very hot days, like 26, 28. I think we almost hit 30 yesterday here in the Kimbern area. Now it is very dry and very hot, but Pete, it would have made you so happy to see how many drills were running yesterday, getting that wheat in the ground after the beans came off. So many beans came off last weekend, and it's been just every field I passed that was beans has got a drill in it. How happy are you to hear that?
So, Lyndsey, I'm ecstatic to hear that, and it's so interesting how the wheat production across Ontario is shifting. And by the way, in 2025, we set a new yield record for the province of Ontario, and we have broken 100 bushels per acre as a provincial average. Now, I can't tell you exactly what the number is because I've asked for the decimal point. They've only given us whole bushels, but it's over 100, and we've never been in triple digits before. So such huge kudos to the YEN program. I really think that the YEN program, the Yield Enhancement Network in wheat, has driven more interest and more excitement about wheat and paying more attention to management. Joanna Fallings from OMAFA doing a great job. Dennis Pennington, Michigan State, like just such a push there. And that's awesome. And then you say, Eastern Ontario, your record winter wheat acres. It's not that long ago, Lyndsey, when I would go out to speak in Eastern Ontario and I would talk about winter wheat, and everybody would just roll their eyes and say, Pete, on our heavy clays, flat heavy clays, you can't grow winter wheat because it just winter kills. It ices. And then, like, we're a spring wheat area. And by the way, that funny stuff on the top of the spring wheat plant is what gets in the way of our straw. We just want straw. And now the weather has shifted enough. Our winters are enough different that we are not seeing the winter kill issues, at least not for the last 5 years. And growers are finding they can get much better yields with winter wheat than they can with spring wheat, and that it is a profitable cash crop. In fact, in many areas, once we go east of Toronto, central Ontario, eastern Ontario, if you're in a dry area, wheat will be one of the few crops where you actually harvest a significant number of bushels per acre. So yeah, I come down into the deep southwest here, and I have some growers here who just say, Pete, it's great weather. We'd like to plant more wheat. If only the price was better, we would keep planting wheat, but we just can't take the economic pain. And so they aren't putting in record acres of wheat, even though we've had probably the best fall in at least a decade, and maybe in my career, for getting it in the ground in good conditions, sometimes into dry dirt, which is bad. But yeah, it's such a dichotomy, and it's such a success story. And yet it's still like the profitability part of it still is haunting us.
Mm-hmm. Now, you mentioned it, and I think it does bear mentioning. With as dry as it was this year, the wheat crop that came off earlier this year did very well. Exactly that, a record. We'll wait for the decimal point. But hearing that, in my area where we were definitely very dry, not as, decimated as some other areas, but definitely very dry. But that cereal crop that came off, probably will be the leader on the profitability side for a lot of growers in this area this year. I do think you're exactly right. Our fall weather plays a huge role, and that is actually one of the questions. And we've got a wheat school that just went out that does sort of cover off these points in more depth. But so we're October 6th. So let's say it was the 4th, 5th, very dry conditions. But Pete, there's an 80% chance of rain tomorrow. How would I, if I were making the decision today to put in wheat in my area, where would I land on seeds per acre? Because the soil is very warm, but it's very dry. The weather looks pretty good. It is going to cool off, but not cold. And to me, this becomes I anticipate it's going to pop out of the ground pretty quick if we get that rain tomorrow.
Absolutely. And therein lies the great quandary, Lyndsey, if we get that rain tomorrow. And it looks pretty promising, but I have lots of growers in Lambton County that are putting wheat in at 1.5 to 2 inches deep into totally dry soil, and you just can't count on rain. And you're, by the way, Lyndsey, in a much shorter season area, and so it's October 4th, 5th, 6th, and I'm still planting wheat in the Ottawa region. I mean, the first question is, are you planting into moisture or are you planting into dust? If you're planting into moisture, then it's going to come up, and then I can tell you exactly what seeding rate. And in your region, because your optimum date is probably September the 15th or 20th, you're now late. Not late enough you wouldn't plant, but now you up that population. So I'm at least 1.8 million, and if I'm on heavy clay in your region, I'll be over 2 million seeds per acre, just to get, because even though it's warm and it's going to come out of the ground quickly, it does cool off as of Wednesday, and we need enough heads per square meter, so we can't count on tillering the way we could have back in September. If you're in South Lambton, where where our optimum date in South Lambton is October the 5th, so we are bang on the optimum date, and that should be, we're going to seed on the heavy clays there, 1.6, 1.7, 1.8 million. If you're in dry dirt, even though there's rain in the forecast, because that rain has evaporated, and one grower I talked to in South Lambton, he's planted, let's say 500 acres, and of the 500 acres, 100 has emerged, and that's because that particular farm caught a 1-inch rain after planting that none of the other 400 acres caught. So in that situation, you just have to say, what are the risks of increasing my seeding rate if I miss that rain, and the risks at this stage are pretty minimal. So in that situation, dry dirt, I'm pushing the population. On heavy clays and Lambton, I'll be at 2.2, 2.3 million. If I was on a silt loam, I'd be at least 1.8 million or 2 million, because there's little downside risk if the rain does come. And if the rain misses you, there's big downside risk to not having enough heads per square meter.
Okay. Now, the other question that came up this week, and I mean, you're right, phosphorus. That's what we all have to think about right now. But there's this question of sulfur. So is there a benefit to fall sulfur on wheat? Because we know we need it early next year. But what about this fall? You had that question this week.
Yeah, absolutely. And a lot of this is based on some of the work that Kurt Steinke has done out of Michigan State University. But the devil is in the details, Lyndsey. And so in Kurt's research, where he had early planted wheat, he got a positive yield boost to fall sulfur. But then you look at when he put that fall sulfur on, and he actually put the fall sulfur on in either late October or early November. Whoa. He called it a starter. Kurt, wait a minute. Wait just a minute. You planted the wheat in either late September or early October, and then you go out and put mez on and call it a starter a month later? I'm not so sure I buy that's a starter. And what's interesting about that is that in that research, he also never put any spring sulfur on. So when you say, is there a benefit to fall sulfur? Well, we know that sulfur can move out of the soil profile over the winter. It's particularly if we have lots of rainfall, lots of moisture over the winter. It doesn't leach the way nitrogen does, so I have to be careful with that. You'd think it does because it's nitrate, which is negatively charged, and nitrate moves readily out of the soil over the winter and is an environmental problem. And you say, well, sulfate, it's also negatively charged. Would it not act the same? But the answer is it doesn't, even though they're both negatively charged. The sulfur will leach, but not about half as much leaching as what we would get with the nitrate. So that fall sulfur, is there a benefit to the fall sulfur, or would we have seen just as much benefit or more benefit had we applied spring sulfur in those trials? So there's lots of things around that we've looked at. Joanna Fallings did some nice research recently looking at MAP versus MES, where we did apply spring sulfur, and we saw zero benefit to the MES over the MAP when we applied the spring sulfur. So when you say, is there a benefit to fall sulfur? I will say, well, for sure there is if you're not going to put sulfur on in the spring, but most of us use sulfur in the spring, and everyone should now because of how little sulfur we get from the atmosphere. And I'm thinking early sulfur in the spring is probably just as good and maybe better because I'm not going to lose as much.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Now I do want to just on that point, when it comes to sulfur, this is the question that comes up. And you know what, Pete, I've decided there's a parallel. It's potassium in the west and sulfur in the east. That is the parallel in that in the places that you need it a lot, but it's much harder to know if you need it or when you need it. Yes, there are nuances, but that's how I've decided to put it in my head. You can tell me I'm wrong. But sulfur, the one thing we do need to know or think about is when you say spring sulfur, you're talking sulfate sulfur, right? There is elemental sulfur. Is there a fit for elemental sulfur in Ontario, or do you see that as a growing fit, or is sulfate the way to go?
So, Lyndsey, there is a great fit for elemental sulfur for crops that need their sulfur later in the growing season. So the problem with elemental sulfur is that the plant doesn't pick it up. It only takes up the sulfate form. And if I put elemental sulfur on, it needs to go through a biological process. So if I was to put elemental sulfur on my winter wheat crop in September, and we get a fall like this in an area that has moisture because it's been warm enough for lots of biological activity, but you don't get biological activity without moisture. You need temperature, you need moisture. So if I was in a situation where, I was one of the lucky farmers, the Elgin County farmers this year are in the Cinderella zone and they've gotten perfect moisture. Yeah, sure. The elemental sulfur, some of that is going to transform into sulfate sulfur. And I've already said that we don't lose it all over the winter. So you could see a benefit to that elemental sulfur in the next winter wheat crop. But remember, winter wheat needs it as soon as it starts growing in the spring. So it needs to be there. And if you're going to apply sulfate sulfur on winter wheat in the spring, get it there early. If, on the other hand, that elemental sulfur sits on top of the soil surface because we broadcast it with our fall fertilizer and it's dry and none of it transforms, come next spring, well, it's too cold for any of that biological activity. And so the elemental sulfur will be of zero value. By the time I get to second cut hay, a bunch of that elemental sulfur, it's been biologically transformed, and that second cut of alfalfa, it'll suck that sulfur up and it'll be awesome for it. But it's all about that when the crop has the demand, when it comes to winter cereals, to first cut alfalfa, the demand is early. So I think sulfate sulfur in the spring makes the most sense.
Perfect. Okay. That is clear as can be. Would love your feedback, everybody. If you've got feedback, 855-776-6147, or drop Pete an email, pjohnson@realagriculture.com, and then listen to the word, because it's Wednesdays. He'll answer your questions there. Pete, let's take a quick break. We're going to hear today's product spotlight, and then we'll bring you back. I've got to make a correction. I led you astray. And then we do need to talk about some super dry harvest conditions and corn dry down as well. So let's take a quick break, and we'll be back with more RealAg Radio, brought to you by FMC Canada, right after this. Important update from FMC. Precision Pack DB878 Pro herbicide is now registered for use in front of oats, along with spring wheat, durum, winter wheat, and barley. DB878 Pro herbicide delivers proven kochia control, including herbicide-resistant biotypes, plus extended control of cleavers, dandelion, narrow-leaved hawksbeard, and volunteer canola. And with Precision Pack herbicide customization, you get the acres you need. No leftovers, no wasted time. See your local participating retailer today.
RealAg Radio is Canada's only daily radio show focused on agriculture. Get expert advice on Agronomic Monday. Tuesdays and Wednesdays will cover a broad range of issues. Thursday we'll hear from farmers across the country on the Farmer Rapid Fire. And we'll wrap things up Fridays with the RealAg Issues panel with Kelvin Hefner and Lyndsey Smith. Join us Monday through Friday at 4:30 Eastern. And don't forget about the replay at 7 in the morning on Rural Radio 147, Sirius XM.
Ever hear that good things come to those who wait? Well, we think it's more like great rewards come to those who book their Invigor hybrid canola early. Through the Invigor Book and Buy Grower program, you could earn a $30 per bag rebate when you book all your Invigor needs by November 14th. Speak with your local retailer about eligible hybrids. Terms and conditions apply. Book early. Come out ahead.
And welcome back to RealAg Radio. Well, it's now time for a product spotlight with today's show sponsor, FMC. And we're joined right now by Allison Wilkinson, who's a product manager with FMC based out of Manitoba. Allison, how are we doing?
Good. How are you, Sean?
Yeah, I'm doing pretty good. Okay, we're in the early days of October here. Why is fall really an ideal time to apply a product like Authority Supreme herbicide?
So a fall application of Authority Supreme herbicide can lead to more consistent activation in the spring, since it requires moisture to activate it. So when we apply Authority Supreme herbicide just before freeze up, we're guaranteeing early activation with either the snow melt or those early spring rainfalls. And as you know, kochia remains a major challenge in the South, and every year it just seems farmers are battling it more and more. And it seems to be moving up further north. So some farmers are lucky enough to be seeing it for the first time. It is one of the earliest weeds to emerge, sometimes early as April. So having Authority Supreme already activated in the spring and ready to control those early flushes definitely takes some workload off of farmers in that early spring timing.
Yeah, for those farmers that are seeing kochia for the first time, that kind of luck is like similar to like getting hives or shingles. It's in that kind of luck category. It is a beast. It is a beast. Okay, so that's great that Authority Supreme it does work on kochia. What other weeds does it cover?
So Authority Supreme in particular does provide extended 2-in-1 weed control against a lot of tough grassy and broadleaf weeds in addition to kochia. It's a great product for controlling certain group 2, 5, and resistant weeds. So as well as kochia, you're going to get control of your wild buckwheats, your red root pigweed, cleavers, lamb's quarters. So it is really a product that has a great fit both in southern and northern geographies. And it also does provide suppression of wild oats, including the group 1 resistant biotypes.
Yeah, is there anything else that listeners need to really know and be thinking about when it comes to Authority Supreme herbicide?
Yeah, so just a reminder that with this product, you can safely seed field peas, chickpeas, soybeans, and sunflowers the following spring. It's also giving you 2 modes of action for strong resistance management, which I know is something that's always at the top of everybody's minds these years. And best of all, it doesn't bind to crop residue, and it doesn't require any incorporation like some of the other fall applicated products do. So by getting your herbicide down in the fall without that extra work, you're definitely taking pressure off yourself in the spring, and not, relying on any type of specific weather come springtime to make sure that you're controlling those weeds early.
Yeah, I was just going to say that, not only is fall a great time and an effective time to do some weed control, but it also alleviates some of that pressure in the springtime. And when we start to run into where we're trying to take care of weeds, should we start seeding and planting? There's a whole bunch of stuff going on. Fall makes just so much sense.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Where can listeners go if they want to get more information on Authority Supreme herbicide?
Yeah, so we really encourage farmers to connect with their local participating retailers, and they can also visit our website at ag.fmc.com/CA.
Great stuff. Okay, an important thought there. Talk to your local retailer and make sure you walk in those doors and say, hey, tell me about Authority Supreme for sure. Well, Allison, thanks so much for joining us here today. Appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thanks, Sean.
That was Allison Wilkinson, who's a product manager with FMC based out of Manitoba. We've got more coming up here on RealAg Radio, brought to you today by FMC.
Soil health is under pressure, but real solutions start below the surface. Black Earth offers a full suite of humic solutions, from high-purity granules to powder, liquid, and soluble formulations, all powered by pure Humulite. Formulated for performance, backed by consistency, trusted by growers worldwide from one of the world's rarest reserves. Grow stronger with the power of Black Earth Humulite. Learn more from Mine to Market at blackearth.com.
Peter Johnson at WheatPete, RealAgriculture.com. I'm the host of The Word, and I love doing The Word. I love the questions. I love the challenges. I love having to apply agronomics to all over the globe and areas outside of my normal jurisdiction. Also, I love the feedback the most, where growers challenge me, tell me about their plot results, help me to learn. The Word, absolutely the best part of my day.
Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am your host for the day, Lyndsey Smith. It is October 6th. It is a Monday, and that means it's Agronomic Monday. And this particular Agronomic Monday is brought to you by FMC Canada. So thank you to Allison for our product spotlight today. We go now back to Peter Pete Johnson, who once was a young farmer. Maybe not that label anymore. Sorry about that, Pete. How you doing?
I'm awesome. I mean, it's such glorious weather. How could you not be awesome? And by the way, I was once young. You are absolutely correct. I am no longer young, but as many people would say, it's being old is better than the alternative.
That's right.
So
It is a privilege. It is a privilege to age. I agree. I like it. Okay. So, I did mention a little earlier in the show last week for anyone who was listening, and we had some great audience members point out, Lyndsey, you said downy mildew on the canola when actually it was powdery mildew, which is true. The video, the canola school that Amber did focused on powdery mildew, but we do have reports of downy mildew as well. And that's where, Pete, I wanted to catch up with you. What's the difference between powdery mildew and downy mildew? Is it important?
Well, certainly so they are sister diseases, Lyndsey.
Okay.
And so is the difference important? Well, of course it's important. You want to be accurate because sometimes when you look at control products, just because the diseases are sisters doesn't mean that the control products work exactly the same. In this particular case, there's not a lot of control measures, and it came in so late that you couldn't control it anyway from that standpoint. So is the difference critical? No, being accurate is always important, and I like to be accurate. And I'm not in Western Canada, so when I actually had an email from a grower in Saskatchewan saying he had downy mildew, I take him at his word.
That's right.
I did not challenge that thought process. But in terms of the impact right now, what we are seeing, the biggest concern is that where we have heavy mildew pressure, and powdery mildew tends probably to be the one that you would focus on first because we really get this coverage of spores on top of the canola leaves. And you would say, well, the canola is pretty well done. Who cares? But the problem is that when we're using our desiccants, the disease, those spores are either intercepting the herbicides products that we're applying and not letting them get into the leaf, or they're deactivating. And so we are not getting the desiccation out of our desiccants that we normally would like. And so the leaves are staying green, the stems are staying green, and we're desiccating and not getting dry plants. And so harvest is a challenge.
That's right. So, and you're exactly right, Pete. Being precise, being accurate is incredibly important. And one of the things we did mention it last week on the show is the health hazard, of course, of anything of a mold or spores or dusts, to obviously protect yourself as well. But you're exactly right, Pete. We did have those who said, a desiccant, a dry down product, not necessarily working as well. So maybe it's not the yield impact that we often focus on with diseases, but definitely impactful for the harvest pass and of course for human health, and that risk of equipment fires as well, which is always a concern. So everyone take care of yourselves out there. And sorry about the downy powdery mix up. But we've said it straight. Okay. Now, on that note of harvest, and this is, as we've mentioned, the weather's been beautiful if you wanted to go to a beach, but perhaps too dry for anyone, as we mentioned, putting in winter wheat or trying to get a bean crop off without a whole bunch of splits or cracked seed coats. So, Pete, what say you? How has harvest gone for those trying to avoid cracking seed coats in over dry conditions?
Yeah, so it's just been an incredible challenge, Lyndsey. And when it comes to edible beans, most of our edible bean seed comes from Idaho, and it's often too dry when it gets here. And we run into bald beans. And so what a bald bean is, when you plant that seed, it emerges with no cotyledons, right? It's just a stick. And it does grow from the auxiliary buds where the cotyledons were, but that cracked seed coat really has an impact on quality. And similarly, with IP soybeans, they want them whole. With edible beans, they want them whole. If you put your kidney beans in a can, and when the consumer opens that can, if those seed coats were cracked in the can, the seed coat will come off the bean. It will float to the surface. They open a can, and there's all these seed coats floating at the top of the can, and nobody likes that, Lyndsey. So It's just been an incredible challenge. We had 2 weekends ago, we had some rain. We had growers that had to stop because the edibles were too dry. We got a shower. Most of Ontario got some rain, and I mean, quite variable from basically 0 all the way up to 4 inches in some locations. But that re-wet the beans enough. We had 2 days where we had enough moisture in the beans to run at them again. And because of this weather that we're having, they were right back down to 10%, 8%. And the other thing that happened is that some of the particular varieties, particularly in the IP soybeans, they were over dry. It seemed like when they wetted back up that it damaged the seed coat integrity. And so then when we combined them, even though they were at 12%, 13% moisture, which is ideal, we just couldn't keep the seed coats on. And so quality has been a real struggle from that standpoint. And it's a weather thing and nothing you can do about it. And lots of growers, are saying, well, gosh, we could handle way more acres if weather's going to be like this. And I just go, oh my gosh, it's Ontario. Not every fall is like Western Canada, but it has been an incredible challenge, and growers are doing everything they can in the combine to maintain quality, but it's a struggle.
Now, we haven't mentioned corn, which maybe this is a record to go this long. But we stupid beans. Anyway, no, the corn crop, though, drying down incredibly quickly. And, of course, like out here, anyway, we had, those frosts the 2 nights in a row. We've had one since then again. Standability issues are going to be a question. But when we're talking about incredibly fast dry down, like, is this catching farmers off guard? What do they need to know?
Oh, so yes, it's catching farmers by surprise. Absolutely. So in the areas where we got enough moisture that the corn crop matured naturally, it hit black layer, and it has been dropping, or even before black layer, but almost black layered. We have been losing in the range of 0.8% in moisture per day, Lyndsey. And that is at least twice as much as what we would typically expect. For the first week of October, last week of September, we would typically say if you could lose 3% for the week in 7 days, that would be pretty good. So, kind of 0.4% per day. No, it's been double that. It's been 0.8% for growers who need feed. They've been able to go to the field and start combining, and it's coming out of the field at 27, 28%. And that's great if you're going to put it in for high moisture or you need that feed now. There are some growers who have early contracts. We've run short in corn in the province of Ontario. So if you could contract corn for delivery before October the 15th, there was some premiums to do that. It looks like those growers are going to win. On the other hand, where we have had it super dry, and so Mark Davis, Napanee, we mention his name fairly frequently. He's a great guy to give us feedback, but he is in an incredible drought in his area. He still has had no moisture to speak of, and his corn stalled at half milk line, and now his cobs are going rubbery, and the corn is not going to black layer properly, and so that's a totally different situation. He's not losing moisture very quickly. Like, if the corn doesn't black layer, it doesn't want to lose its moisture. It's just not the natural development, and so that's a totally different story than what we have where we had just, enough moisture to get a normal, quote unquote, crop.
What's normal anymore, Pete? I mean, really. But maybe average? Can we go with average? I don't know. I will say, so yesterday here in Kimburn, we had a harvest market. It was lovely to meet so many of my neighbors, and there was, of course, many farmers that stopped in, that, talking about walking the cornfields and just being really disappointed in some areas of what cob is there. Like the plant itself looked not bad, but just really disappointing tip-back on these cobs. And it definitely, even if, it doesn't look that bad for some, you really have to get in there and start looking at some of these cobs and start looking at yield that way. We'll see where it all ends up. It's a bit of a double whammy. Corn prices aren't great either. But as a livestock producer, Pete, that helps me. So I just want to send a shout out to all those livestock producers buying corn. We're finally winning.
And so, by the way, Lyndsey, it is a good reason to plant more winter wheat.
That's right. Good call.
It's just spread your risk. And you mentioned, can we talk about averages? Sure, we can talk about averages because, Mark Davis, his feet are in the freezer. My good friend Al McCollum in Elgin County, who's in the Cinderella zone, his head is in the oven. On the average, they're comfortable, right?
We're good. Everything's fine. Okay. Not fine, though. Reports of pokeweed. What the heck is pokeweed? And if I have it, it does sound like something I need antibiotics for. But if I've got pokeweed, how do I control it? What do I do with it?
Oh, pokeweed we don't talk much about pokeweed, and it's been around for a long time, and the birds spread it. So one grower that I talk to quite frequently must be on the flight path, and every year he will have to go along where the hydro wires go through his farms, and he will have to tackle pokeweed, like hand spraying pokeweed with extremely high rates of either Roundup, glyphosate, or dicamba, because both of those products do have activity. But if it ever gets established, then even high rates of those products aren't enough. In Illinois, I have seen pictures where the pokeweed plants got so big in a grower's field that they actually had to dig them out with a backhoe.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, like that's how big the root system gets. So I had a question. A grower picked up a new farm and he has pokeweed and he sprayed it a couple times and he kind of said like, what do I do with it? And the answer was get out there with the shovel. So he's running the buggy. He's not chasing the combine every minute. So when he's got 15 spare minutes, he stops with the buggy and he has the shovel with him and he digs out the pokeweed, and you just have to stay on top of it. If you let it continue to grow, it will become an absolute nightmare. And we can get control with, as I said, glyphosate or dicamba, but it takes unbelievably high rates. So it takes a backpack sprayer and just treating those individual plants, or it takes a shovel.
Mm-hmm. Shovels are your friend sometimes. All right. That's just how it has to be. Okay. We are out of time, Pete. We didn't get to talk about tillage systems, so maybe we'll put that on next week, or maybe you'll talk about it on the Word. But maybe we'll put that on hold. But thank you so much for this week. I know it is going to get colder. Goodness, we didn't even talk about our favorite Thanksgiving foods. And next week is Thanksgiving. There's just so much more. Anyway, we'll have to talk about it next time. All right, Pete, have a great week. We'll talk soon.
Yeah, thanks, Lyndsey. And all that says is that Pete talks too long.
But it's all good stuff, so it's okay. All right. Okay, we're going to take a quick break, and I'll be back with our last segment of the day here on RealAg Radio. Today, of course, brought to you by FMC Canada, right after this.
Built on over 100 years of seed innovation and unwavering commitment to farmers, Pioneer 100 Series canola hybrids deliver a step change in yield performance and agronomic traits. This isn't just better canola, it's different canola. Pioneer 100 Series. Contact your local Pioneer sales representative or visit pioneer.com/100 series to learn more today.
Whether you're running a farm operation, in a career within an organization, starting your own business, looking for your dream job, operating a company in agri-food, or want to hone your overall life skills, this conference is for you. Celebrating over 10 years of bringing women in ag and food together, join the Advancing Women Conference in Niagara Falls on November 23rd, 24th, and 25th. Visit advancingwomenconference.ca for more information and to register. Welcome back to RealAg Radio here on Rural Radio, Channel 147, Sirius XM. I am your host for this Agronomic Monday, Lyndsey Smith. It is October 6th. If you can believe it, next Monday, Canadian Thanksgiving, everybody. I hope you are ready. And of course, for all our American friends, yes, we have Thanksgiving early in October. It just makes for a better October. I'm going to be honest. I think American Thanksgiving is too close to Christmas. There, I said it. However, you could be like your regular host, Sean Haney, and do the double dip, which is celebrate Canadian and American Thanksgiving. Because you know what? There's always time for turkey and stuffing. All right. This segment brought to you by The Dirt Podcast. From nutrient management to the latest weather, market, and ag trends, The Dirt, an economics podcast, is your place for farm smart topics to boost your profitability. Join Mike Howell on Season 4 of The Dirt Podcast, available now at nutrient-economics, that's economics with a K, .com. All right, for the last segment of today's show, we're going to bring in Olivia Noorenberghe and Bern Tobit. Now, Olivia joined me just a few weeks ago on The Agronomists. Hint, hint. There's an episode tonight, 8 p.m. Eastern, or check it out on YouTube or realagriculture.com/agronomists to talk about corn harvest, specifically silage at the time. And one of the things that came up was this increased incidence of corn rootworm becoming a major issue for some fields. Now, for the fields that are having rootworm issues, it's quite bad. That doesn't mean that there are a lot of fields necessarily having issues, but we're a couple of years now into a bit of a red flag on corn on corn on corn. But as we unpack in this Corn School episode, it's not necessarily just rotation that is to blame. There is an evolution of the pest itself, and soil type plays a pretty strong factor. So let's listen. This is Olivia and Bern in our recent Corn School episode. Check it out.
Today I'm in Perth County, catching up with Olivia Noorenberghe from Pride Seeds. How you doing?
Good. How are you, Bern?
I'm doing well, and I'm doing a little better than this cornfield because I know we've got some corn rootworm in here, and I want to talk about how to manage this pest. Been around a long time, but I guess we're seeing a little bit of a comeback, a little bit more of a challenge these days.
Yeah, it's been a pest that has affected, the U.S. Corn Belt for years. I would say the resurgence kind of in Ontario, or where it really came into play, is kind of around that 2019-2020 timeframe. And definitely in the area that I cover for work, which is basically, a heavy livestock area. There's lots of corn on corn. There's definitely been some corn rootworm issues in the past couple of years.
Yeah, now we're going to take a walk through this field. Olivia, take us through it. What are the symptoms? What are we seeing in this field?
So typically when I get calls from growers, it's usually around that July timeframe, and that's when they're actually, getting out and spraying maybe a fungicide, and looking at their corn and seeing how things are doing. And yeah, that's typically when I get the call, and what they're really noticing is actually goosenecking, and some lodging in their corn. And so why that happens is because of the corn rootworm life cycle. It starts off as larvae in that, May and June timeframe, and it's feeding on the roots, and it's kind of doing some root pruning. And so basically, let's say that we get a storm in July, high winds or something like that, the corn is not able to anchor itself to the soil, and so that's when you'll kind of have it fall over maybe a little bit, and then it's trying to grow back up to the sunlight. So that's where you get that goosenecking. So that's one strong indication that there is some corn rootworm injury.
Now, Olivia, typically I've always thought, corn rootworm was all about corn on corn. We were following corn after corn, and obviously that gives the pest a leg up. But that's changing. We're seeing a lot more of the pest overwintering.
Yeah, typically when we switch into a rotation, that will help combat the pest. But we're actually seeing some populations are adapting, and so we'll actually see some what's called extended diapause now. And so let's say that we're switching to soybeans or something after our corn, and then we go back into corn the year after. The extended diapause, basically those populations can overwinter for a year, or stay dormant for a year, I guess is the proper term, and then come back the second year and then be a problem as well. So that's another issue that we're encountering.
What about soil type here? I know that makes a difference.
Yeah, so a lot of the soil type that they really like is some of those, loamier, heavier soils. So I've done some trapping on some sandier soils, and there was actually a field, and it was it was corn on corn for like 17 years, but they don't seem to like those sandy soils. We put some traps in the field trying to get an idea of what the beetle pressure was with those adults, and didn't see nearly the impact that we do on some of those heavier clays or loamy productive soils.
Well, let's talk about how we tackle this pest. First thing comes to my mind is insecticides and seed treatments. Where are we on that?
So insecticides and seed treatments, I know there are a few people who are using soil applied insecticides on their planter. Finding a planter that has the soil insecticide boxes on it can be maybe difficult. And really, if we're using insecticides like that, we're kind of just kicking the can down the road. Resistance can develop to those as well. We're continuing to work with some partners in the chemical industry to look at seed treatment options that are approved in Canada. Yep. So we continue to work with people on that. So in the next coming years, you might see something that is approved in Canada, but we're continuing to do research on that. And right now, there's not really a approved option yet.
And the big go-to obviously has been traits in recent years. Where are we there? I mean, I know, let's talk a little bit about resistance, because we've had some resistance and that's brought about new traits.
Yes. So I would say the reason why this has been such a problem pest is the resistance that has developed to certain BT traits. And so we actually have some new traits on the market, such as VT4 Pro or Smart Stacks Pro. And so those actually introduce a new mode of action through RNAi technology that will help be an important tool in the toolbox to try and combat some of these pests. So obviously rotation is key, but then also if we know that we have some high rootworm pressure, we're in a problem area where we've maybe seen it before, utilizing some of those traits becomes an important part of the puzzle.
Final question for you. Hey, we're going to roll in here pretty soon with a combine. What should growers be thinking about as they start getting into harvest this fall?
Yeah, so I think recognizing and setting the expectation for that crop. Obviously, we're going to see some yield losses potentially, depending on the severity of the root clipping, because, that can be a problem with uptake of moisture, uptake of nutrients. So this corn crop might not be what we expect it to be with that damage. So setting our expectations, knowing where we stand and making a plan for next year, I think is key. If we know that we have a problem field, rotation, obviously, and then also if we can't rotate, because there are a lot of instances where livestock farmers rely on corn for their animals, trying to use some of those new traits that are options.
What about farmers who actually get into the field and don't know they have rootworm? What should they be looking for?
Yeah, I think if you are harvesting or you have a custom guy who's harvesting, you'll know whether you have corn rootworm based off of once you're in the combine, you will be able to kind of see that lodging and goosenecking of the plant, and that can be kind of messy for harvest, but I think you'll have a good idea of whether you have it or not based off of once you get in the machine and start rolling.
Big thank you to Olivia Noorenberghe and Bern Tobin for that Corn School. The Corn School, of course, brought to you by BASF and Pride Seeds. Well, that does it for today's show. Thank you so much for joining me and making RealAg Radio a part of your day. Thank you to all who have downloaded the podcast. We do appreciate that, of course. Your regular host, Sean Haney, will be back tomorrow. But before I let you go, big thanks to Peter Johnson and, of course, to Allison Wilkinson for joining us here on the show. I did mention off the top that there is an agronomist tonight. It's my show that goes live 8 p.m. Eastern. Find it on YouTube, Facebook, X, LinkedIn. Tonight we're going to be talking about fall weed control. It's so incredibly important, and it is potentially, especially when the weather is working well, it really could give you a jump on some of those hard to control weeds, really troublesome weeds, or just it's the best time to kill certain weeds right now or in the coming weeks. So check that out, please. And of course, if you've got feedback on today's show, story ideas, etc., my email is lsmith@realagriculture.com. Drop me a line, or of course, you can follow us across social media. All right, everyone, have a great rest of your Monday. Cheers, everybody.